Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are diving into a moment that many once believed would never happen, a moment so massive, so shocking, that it is already being whispered about as the largest troop surrender in modern history. This is not just another battlefield update. This is not just another headline flashing across your screen. This is the kind of event that redraws maps, reshapes power, and rewrites how wars are remembered. If what we are witnessing truly marks the end phase of this conflict, then history books are being written in real time, and Vladimir Putin's war, as the world has known it, is collapsing before our eyes. For years, this war was presented as inevitable, unstoppable, and unwinnable for one side. From the very beginning, the narrative pushed by Moscow was clear. Overwhelming force, endless manpower, and iron control would grind down resistance. But wars are not won by numbers alone. They are won by morale, logistics, leadership, belief, and the will of soldiers who must actually carry out orders under fire. And today, that illusion of unstoppable power is breaking, loudly, publicly, and irreversibly. Imagine thousands upon thousands of troops laying down their weapons. Not retreating, not regrouping, not melting back into the fog of war, but surrendering openly, collectively, and in numbers so vast that even seasoned military analysts are struggling to comprehend the scale. This is not the surrender of a single unit cut off behind enemy lines. This is not a temporary collapse due to lack of supplies. This is something far more serious. This is the visible cracking of an entire war machine. To understand why this matters so much, we must look beyond the images and ask the deeper question: how did it come to this? How does a war that was supposed to be over in weeks spiral into a catastrophe defined by mass surrender? The answer lies in a chain reaction of miscalculations, broken promises, and a growing realization among soldiers that they were sent to fight a war with no clear purpose and no achievable victory. From the earliest days of the invasion, cracks were already forming. Soldiers were told they would be welcomed. They were told resistance would crumble. They were told they were liberators. Instead, they faced fierce opposition, modern weapons, and a population unwilling to bow. As weeks turned into months, and months into years, the gap between official propaganda and battlefield reality grew wider. Soldiers on the ground saw the truth with their own eyes, and no speech from Moscow could erase it. The modern battlefield is unforgiving. Drones watch every movement. Precision strikes punish mistakes. Supply lines are hunted relentlessly. In such an environment, morale becomes everything, and morale, once lost, is nearly impossible to restore. Reports began to surface of under-equipped units, delayed reinforcements, and commanders issuing impossible orders. Soldiers were told to hold positions that could not be held. They were ordered to advance without cover, without armor, and sometimes without hope. What happens when fear outweighs loyalty? What happens when survival becomes more important than slogans? The answer is surrender, not as an act of cowardice, but as an act of human instinct. Soldiers are not machines. When they realize they have been abandoned by strategy and sacrificed by leadership, the calculation changes. The weapon in their hands stops feeling like a symbol of power and starts feeling like a burden pulling them closer to death. This is where the story takes a historic turn. The surrender we are witnessing is not happening in secret. It is happening in the open, under cameras, drones, and satellite imagery. The world is watching, and that visibility amplifies its impact. Every image of troops laying down arms sends shockwaves through command structures, not just on the battlefield, but all the way back to the Kremlin. Because surrender is contagious. Once it begins at scale, it spreads faster than any offensive. Commanders now face an impossible dilemma. If they punish surrender harshly, they risk mutiny. If they ignore it, they signal weakness. If they deny it, they lose credibility. And credibility, once shattered, cannot be repaired with speeches. The soldiers still fighting start to ask dangerous questions. Why are we still here? Why are they surrendering? Do they know something we don't? This is how wars truly end, not always with a final decisive battle, but with a collapse from within. The moment soldiers stop believing in victory, the war is already lost, even if the guns are still firing. And that is exactly what makes this surrender potentially the final nail in the coffin of Putin's war. Politically, the implications are just as devastating. For years, the Russian leadership built its image on strength, control, and inevitability. A mass surrender destroys that image overnight. Allies begin to distance themselves. Neutral states reconsider their positions. Domestic audiences, once shielded by censorship, start to hear whispers that something has gone terribly wrong. And once those whispers turn into questions, control begins to slip. Inside Russia, this moment cannot be fully hidden. Families will ask why their sons surrendered instead of fighting. Veterans will talk. Soldiers returning home will carry stories that no state media narrative can fully erase. The myth of total control begins to crack, just as it did in past empires that overreached and underestimated the cost of war. On the global stage, the balance of power shifts. A war once feared as endless suddenly looks finite. Nations that hesitated now see a turning point. Military planners study the surrender carefully, not just for what it says about this war, but for what it reveals about modern conflict itself. The age of sending massive formations into hostile territory without airtight logistics and morale is coming to a brutal end. And then there is the human cost, the part that statistics can never fully capture. Each surrendered soldier represents a life spared, a family that may still be reunited, a future that did not end in a trench or under rubble. War is often measured in territory gained or lost, but its true weight is carried by individuals. In that sense, surrender is not just a strategic event. It is a deeply human one. For Ukraine, this moment represents more than a military success. It is validation of resilience. It is proof that determination, adaptability, and international support can stand up to brute force. It sends a powerful message. Occupation is not destiny, and resistance, when sustained, can change the course of history. But even in victory, the scars of war will remain for generations. For Putin, the consequences are existential. Leaders who build their legitimacy on victory cannot survive defeat easily. A war framed as necessary and righteous cannot simply be walked away from without consequences. The question now is not whether the war is over, but how it ends and what that ending means for Russia's future, its leadership, and its place in the world. Will there be negotiations? Will there be internal power struggles? Will this surrender accelerate fractures within the elite? These questions now loom larger than any battlefield maneuver, because once the perception of strength is gone, everything built upon it becomes unstable. History teaches us that wars rarely end the way they begin. They start with confidence and end with reckoning. They begin with promises and end with accountability. And the largest troop surrender in modern history, if it stands as such, will be remembered not just as a military event, but as the moment when the war's outcome became unavoidable. So as we watch these developments unfold, remember this: the end of a war is not always marked by silence. Sometimes it is marked by the sound of weapons hitting the ground, by soldiers choosing life over orders, and by the quiet realization that an empire's ambitions have met reality. Putin's war is not ending because someone declared it over. It is ending because the people ordered to fight it no longer believe in it. And once that belief is gone, no amount of force can bring it back. Stay with us, because history is moving fast, and what comes next may redefine an entire era.